and it's a pleasure to have all the family and former pioneers back with us this morning. First thing I want to do is turn over to pages 11 and 12. They're not numbered, but they're towards the back, and we will see all of the people that have been inducted into the memorial since 1996. And like I said, this is the 23rd year. And at this time, I would like to take just a moment and meditate a little bit on the former people that have been inducted and the impact they may have had on your lives and the impact that they will have on future generations, if you will. And then I will open us with a word of prayer, and we'll get started with our ceremony. Bow our heads. Our most gracious Heavenly Father, we just thank you for the opportunity to come and gather in a free country where we can fellowship and remember people that have been instrumental in our lives. We thank you for Stillwater High School. We thank you for the fact that they've got athletics and the great impact they've had on many of our lives. I just pray that as we induct these new people today, that we can see how they benefited from athletics and how that impact on their lives impacted the communities that they lived in and the people that surrounded them. I just pray that you'll watch over us, take care of us, help us to enjoy this time together. In Jesus' name we do pray. Amen. Okay, some of you may or may not know how this organization got started, but back about the middle 90s, I had a teammate by the name of Nick Dreesen that passed away unexpectedly. And after his funeral, Ralph Dreesen, his dad, came up to Jim Harris and said, "Hey, I've got money. These people have donated money in Nick's name, and I don't know what to do with it." He said, "I want it to go towards athletics in some way, but," he said, "I don't really want to put it in something that's bricks and mortar." So he said, here's the money, do something with it." So Coach Harris gathered a bunch together, and we brainstormed and came up with the idea of starting this memorial and trying to build on it from the standpoint of people donating money so that we could start an endowment that we could then turn around and give kids graduated from high school, Stillwater High School, that participated in athletics that didn't have a means or a way to go to school, a scholarship. So over the years we have done that. We're now up to $10,000 scholarship. I think it's the largest private scholarship that is given here at the high school. So that's kind of how the whole thing got started. And of course, it's been a total joy to participate in it and be involved in it. At this time, I'd like the board members of SPAM, that's what we call it for short, Stillwater Pioneer Athlete Memorial, to stand up and be recognized. If you'll just stand right where you're at. These are the board members of Stillwater Pioneer Athlete Memorial. Thanks. I was going to introduce Uva Gordon. Is he still here? No, he snuck out. Uva is the principal at the high school now, and I don't see anybody else from the board that's involved, so we'll move right along. If you'll notice, the next thing on the page to follow is introductions and remarks and stuff like that. The only thing we would like to happen is we are videoing this, so if the presenters would make sure and stay close to the mics and kind of in front of the podium, then they'll get a better video. We give these to the family afterwards so that they have a memory of this special day. Also, afterwards, we're going to take pictures of each family. So if you'll wait till afterwards and Ken Helt is going to help us take pictures and of each group, and then we'll have those available if you would like some in the future, okay? Also, back in the back of your program, there is a special page which we have called the Pioneer Difference Maker Award. And you can see a picture of a nice-looking young lady who was a teacher here at the high school, and one of our ugly board members, Max Talley. A couple of years ago, we started noticing when we took applications for the scholarship from the kids, we would get 15, 20 applications each year to narrow down to our one scholarship winner. And we would ask the question, which teacher has made the most difference in your life as a Stillwater Pioneer? And so over the years, we would notice that there was names that kept appearing on these youngsters' application. And so we decided that we should maybe recognize some of these teachers. So we have done that for a couple of years, and we want to do it again this year. We had a lot of people, and this goes back a number of years, that recognized this teacher and talked about what great impact he had on their life. So at this time, I'd like to ask Jason Carley to come forward. Jason doesn't know anything about this. He's been coerced into coming by his principal telling him, it'd be nice that you came to this. So this is a prize for Jason. Jason, we'd like to present you with this and congratulate you for having an impact on so many kids' athletes. And also a check for $500. Wow. At this time, I don't know if I overlooked it or not. I mentioned the scholarship recipients. Are there any of the scholarship recipients here that we should recognize? I didn't see any of them, but they may have snuck in on me. Okay, no. All right, this time we'll start with our presentation of our new inductees. And the first one that we're going to recognize is Grover Raines. And here to present him is Leroy Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Derringer, and welcome everybody. It's always good to be with so many familiar faces and names, and particularly those. I kind of in this world of recognition and memorials and things of that nature with the Wrestling Hall of Fame here in Stillwater. So. It's a pleasure to be with you. Although I didn't go to Stillwater High School, I've spent more time in Stillwater than any of all my 60 years anywhere else in the country I've been. And so it's great to be here with you, and it's great to have been asked. Thank you, Virginia, Grover's wife, for asking me to present him and talk a little bit about him and share a few things with you regarding Grover's career and his life and the impact he's had. And what an impact it was. As a coach, you really get a special, particularly a wrestling coach, and particularly in this town where so many of them have been so successful. And not only at the high school level, but across the street at Oklahoma State University, who has the greatest history in wrestling in the land. So it's a very unique relationship that we all treasure. And I'm sure you do too. But Grover was born in Perkins in 1926, and of course, and then he moved to Texas for about 10 years, and then came back in the 30s and early 30s, mid 30s, and like most people in this area, he grew up on the plains, familiar with rural and a farming lifestyle, and he happened to be won a state title in 1944 in the heavyweight division, but he was really a light heavyweight. He went on to Oklahoma State and wrestled at 177 pounds. So Most heavyweights in those days were in the 200 pound range. They weren't really big people at that time. He earned an NCAA title at Oklahoma State. He wrestled for Coach Griffith in his senior year. The program was so powerful in those days that oftentimes they would come in and be great high school wrestlers and wouldn't make the team till their junior, senior year. And Grover made the team and won the NCAA championship. That says it right there. He did, after graduation, he majored in industrial arts, was a shop teacher, and also did stints in the Navy and Army, went in ROTC after college, but took a first high school job after military service was at Bristow, and he spent a short time there before he got hired by Stillwater High School, came back to his alma mater here, and took the team to his first team that he inherited. He won a state championship with the Kenyon brothers. You may remember Phil and Jim Kenyon were state champions, as well as Porter. Trying to think of Mr. Porter's first name. But he was on that team. They all won state titles in that year, and he led the team to. A couple years later, he got this opportunity in California to go to Bakersfield. Well, let me back up a little bit and say just a few things about what Grover as a coach here was like. I interviewed a few of his former wrestlers before getting my notes together, and they had talked a lot about, the biggest thing, he was a pretty mild-mannered guy unless your weight was fluctuating. And if you, those guys that would come in and bounce their weight and be overweight and have to really crash to get there, he didn't like that. And being a shop teacher, he had a pretty nice paddle that he had made, and generally that would cost you a few licks if your weight was too far out of control in those days. And he was as you can imagine, he was a well-built man and intimidating. He also he put up in the wrestling room in those days, he had a set of pull-up bars that went the length of the room. And he was big into endurance and conditioning and grip. The grip strength was real important to coaches and wrestlers in those days, and he would make them hang. Who could hang the longest? And they just dreaded it because it was at the end of practice that he would do that. He would also, he had a 1954 pickup, and he'd load the whole team up, anybody that wanted to go or could go, and he'd always go to Norman when they'd wrestle the Bedlam Series. OU and OSU would wrestle the Bedlam Series, load everybody up, and in those days, they didn't have laws about that. And, they only had 2 seats in a pickup, and anyway, and he also had found that he ran a harvest combine, so he kept them out. If they needed a little work or wanted to go out and play around in the fields, he accommodated them. So he was a very generous person, but always very active. Being able to teach, being able to coach, and he had a little side business with the harvesting. And that's, it kind of took him to Bakersfield because at that time in California it was started to boom in that area. And he coached high school for a long time in Bakersfield. He could have been, and we inducted him here in the State Chapter Hall of Fame for lifetime service in Oklahoma, but he could have easily been inducted in California as well. That's where he did the majority of his high school coaching, and then came back after he retired to Perkins, where it all started for him, where he was born and raised. And the thing about, to just sum up, he was always being productive and always trying to help others, particularly young people. He was in a day where you worked with your hands. I mean, the shop teacher taught valuable lessons to people that had to go out and learn how to work with their hands, and as a result, he's just a salt of the earth person. That's all there is to say. The best way to sum Grover up, and thank you for honoring him on behalf of the family. Virginia, would you mind coming up for the presentation of Grover's award, and any family members you want to bring up?
It's our pleasure to present this. Would you like to introduce your family?
My granddaughter, Carrie Russell from Texas, great-granddaughter, Elle, and Kate.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming. Grover helped us several times in presenting other inductees, so he was very familiar with the Stillwater Pioneer Athlete Memorial himself, and it's a pleasure to have him inducted into it. Gosh, our next inductee is very, very close to the board, as he was on the board, I think, almost from day one. And here to present Bob Phillips is Roger Beecham.
Well, it's my pleasure to be here, and thank you, Vicki, Chris, and Brandon, for asking me to present. And I also want to thank Harry Self for doing the research and getting the presentation together to make this induction for Bob. Bob Haskell, Bob Phillips, Robert Haskell, Bob Phillips, MD, was born on July the 24th, 1942, in Stillwater, Oklahoma, the son of Alvina and Elmer Dean Phillips. Bob grew up in the Stillwater community, where his parents owned the Tiger Drug Stores and where Bob attended Stillwater Public Schools. Bob was an integral part of the very close-knit Stillwater High School class of 1960. Or the class, if any of the class members here, would you stand up and be recognized? Bob was one of the most outstanding individuals the city of Stillwater ever produced. He was extremely intelligent and energetic. Although relatively small in stature, he was very athletic. Bob was interested and involved in some way in all sports in high school, but his best talents were in track and field. Bob was a letterman and leader on the Pioneer cross-country teams from 1957 through 1960. He lettered in track, and his greatest accomplishment occurred as a member of the Pioneer track team of that era. Initially, Bob was a distance runner on the track team until Coach Jim Harris discovered Bob was probably one of the fastest guys on the team, so he became a sprinter and a relay team member, and I think he took the team to the state track meet. But what I cannot pass and not mention is the fact that Stillwater had pretty good athletic teams back then. We won a couple of state championships. The football team and track team did very well, but not to be outdone, the Stillwater Municipal League basketball team that Bob and a number of us played on, we won the all-city championship for our age group. As an adult, Bob continued to play recreational sports around town, but his real passion in sports was playing golf, and his country club friends can attest to his skills and accomplishments. Are any of them here today? There we go. After graduating from high school, Bob attended OSU for a year before transferring to Southwestern Oklahoma State College in Weatherford, where he received his Doctor of Pharmacy degree in 1965. Bob was admitted to the University of Oklahoma College of Medicine, where he graduated in 1969. Bob's medical specialty was surgery, and he did all of his training and certifications at the University of Oklahoma Medical Center, where he finished in 1976. His surgery residency at OU was interrupted in 1971, where he served in the U.S. Navy as a doctor and ultimately obtained the rank of lieutenant commander. Bob served in the Navy in Vietnam, where he was awarded the Bronze Star for meritorious service. Now, the way Bob told me about it is that he thought he was going to be a Navy doctor. He was going to be stationed in some white hospital somewhere, and he ended up being dumped out in the jungle with the Marines, and that's how he got his Bronze Star for meritorious service. He finished his tour duty in Sicily. Following his Navy duty, Bob returned to his surgical residency in Oklahoma City in 1973, where he met the love of his life, Vicki Hudson, a surgical nurse in the operating room of the VA hospital, and they married in June 1974 and have two sons, Chris and Brandon. Bob was totally devoted and extremely proud of his wonderful family. Bob returned to Stillwater in 1976, where he established a very distinguished medical career in general surgery, from which he retired in 2003. During his 27-year medical career, Bob served as president of the Oklahoma Surgical Association, as president of the Oklahoma chapter of the American College of Surgeons, as vice chairman of the Board of Trustees of the Oklahoma Medical Association, and as chief of staff and chief of surgery of the Stillwater Medical Center. After retiring, Bob became the director of the cardiac rehab with the Stillwater Medical Center Total Health Program. He was always loyal to his multitude of friends, and usually the first person called on with all ailments, whether real or imagined. Bob was a stalwart and irreplaceable member of the First United Methodist Church in Stillwater. He was extremely generous with his time in service to his church and served in numerous leadership capacities. He was organized, dedicated, and diligent in everything that he did. He made 14 trips to South America at his own expense as a part of the Volunteers in Mission through the auspices of the United Methodist Church, sometimes accompanied by Vicki and sometimes by their sons. Bob displayed the same energy and dedication as a faithful Kiwanian in both the Golden K and Kiwanis clubs. Bob was among the small group of dedicated people who conceived of, planned, and ultimately organized the Stillwater Pioneer Athletic Memorial, as we know as SPAM. In 1995, Bob served on the original board of directors of SPAM for the first 5 years until the organization was well established. He returned to the board in 2006, and he continued his loyal service until his death. He served on all the committees of the board over the years, but his most significant contributions were made on the finance and nominating committees. He had a very challenging questions when interviewing the Stillwater scholarship applicants as they were interviewed each spring. Throughout Bob's life, he continued to be a very strong supporter and fan of Stillwater athletics, attending most of the high school football and basketball games and other high school and lower school sporting events. Bob had a great sense of humor. He loved life and was good at living it. He was universally loved by all those who were privileged to know him. He will be forever remembered for his wonderful, effervescent smile. Thank you.
Vicki, would you come up, and any family members you want to come up? And on behalf of the family organization, introduce your family?
Well, I will. This is Lou, Bob's sister. Many of you know her. And our son, Chris, who actually serves on the SPAM board right now, and our daughter-in-law, Angie. Our grandson, Corbin, who has a soccer game at 12 o'clock. Our son, Brandon, and his son, Bora. And where's Dama? Dama back here, and Migu. And Lauren is hiding, and Ashlyn. So I'm really glad to have both my sons and their families in Stillwater. It's just wonderful to have them all here. It's great to be here today and see so many of you, and especially this class of 1960 that Bob was so attached to. And thank you all, you board members. You know that he would be here right now today doing everything that you all are doing if he could be. But he is with us here in spirit, and I'm very glad for that. And I'm glad for you all to be here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You know, Roger was recognizing people that were involved with Dr. Phillips. How many people have been cut on by Dr. Phillips? Yeah. So he had great impact on a lot of us. I put a little note on my body when I had a hernia. Not this side. He didn't think it was that funny. Our next inductee is Carl Heiner, and him to present him is Tom Kenny.
First of all, Jason Carley needs to send me half that check. He was my student teacher here, and he took over teaching criminology that I used to teach for about 12 years. So, Jason, I'll expect half of it afterwards. Thanks to the SPAM committee for having Carl as an inductee for this year. I've known Carl since he was in the 4th grade with me. I attended Spring Valley Country School District 18. He was a member of Pleasant View Country School, and we both graduated and came to Stillwater as country boys. We were the new, you might say, fish in a barrel. As we'd come in, we'd ride the bus in to town, and here come the country boys. I think that they kept, when the Heiners moved out to Fairgrounds Road, there were 6 boys. The Kinnicks had 7, and we kept Spring Valley and Pleasant View populated, so they kept the schools still in that session at that particular time. We'd have a May Day, what I considered a May Day, every year with all the country schools. We'd get together down at the old fairgrounds where the municipal swimming pool is now, and we'd have softball games, wrestling matches, we'd run races, throw the softball, and then play a softball game between different schools. Pleasant View would never win. You know, they would always be coming behind Spring Valley. Well, Carl hated to lose, and I have a sister that if Title IX would have been in effect at that time, she had probably been an All-American, whatever she wanted to be. Well, she always won the softball throw. Carl would strain his guts out to try and beat her every year. 5 straight years, she beat him. Of course, she beat me too. So he never could beat her. It was a lot of fun when we got all the schools together, because we had all the cooks from each one of the schools that would come in and make their favorite feed, you might say, and feed everybody. Carl came to Stillwater High School in the 9th grade, and it was totally different than what we're used to. One teacher for 8 grades. Here we came in with all the rest of the classmates, and as I say, we get off the bus, and it was a totally different experience. But he went out for wrestling, was a member of the wrestling club, vice president of FFA. He did a lot of the stuff integrated into the school just fine. He was, as Louis L'Amour would say, he was the kind of guy that you'd ride the river with. He was a good old boy. When we were sophomores in high school, he did something that kind of kept everybody that you didn't mess with Carl Heiner alive. Back in those days, you would drag Maine. You'd go down to where the ancestor is, which is 16th and Maine. You'd come back to the Sonic. It was where it is now, but it was turned around different. Then you'd come up to the Villa, and there you'd drag. That was your drag, what you consider dragging Maine. Well, we were at the Villa one evening, and for whatever reason, I don't know, this guy that had graduated a year before was home on leave from the Army, and he was a parachuter, or paratrooper, in good shape and everything else. And for whatever reason, as I said, he picked on Carl. He said, "I'm gonna kick your butt." And Carl said, "Well, let's get after it." So everybody, word spread like wildfire. Going to be a fight at Boomer Lake. Everybody come to Boomer because Heiner's going to get in a fight. And so here we all traverse out to Boomer Lake. Cars are parked all haphazardly all around. And he gets out of his car, this guy standing over there just waiting on Carl. Carl gets out of the car, walks over to it, and just knocks the hell out of him. Knocked him down, knocked him out. Carl got back in the car, and we went on our way. Monday morning, the guy that he had whipped was 7 feet tall, weighed 330 pounds. But it was a kind of story that from that time on, he made his mark. No one messed with Carl whatsoever. Carl was elected sheriff and had several terrible occurrences that happened with him. A couple of murders. There was a lot of activity shortly after he was elected sheriff. And as Carol's indicated, she saw him age right there in front of her with everything that occurred there in the sheriff's office. But he was a great sheriff. He did a lot of innovative things for the sheriff's department. Deputies used to have to drive their own car, would not get paid for it, would not get reimbursed or whatever. He changed a bunch of that, changed the education level of the sheriff's department. Looking around, I don't think any of you all ever spent any time at the Heiner Hilton or the Heiner Hotel. That was a place that quite a few of the constituents went to visit. Bill DeFee used to coach football here. Came from Pryor in 1984 and started what they considered Pioneer Pride. He started a Pioneer Pride who Dr. Green was the first recipient of the Pioneer Pride. Well, prior to having the Pioneer Pride, I know a number of you remember this. This was the S Club. You were scurved for a week. And I mean, it was a hell of a week if you were trying to become a member of the S Club. Dick Overholt wrote his name in there twice. I don't know what Heiner had to do for him, but I'm sure it was something pretty good. But to tell you how much the Stillwater High School meant to Carl, this was congratulations. I got my S Club May the 11th, 1958. This was hung out in his shop, and it meant a great deal to him and to his family, I'm sure. But if some Carols want to have this, if you want to look and see if your name is on here, and Overholt, you did sign this twice. You're welcome to look at it. And Melissa, if you'd like to come forward and introduce your family. Carol and I used to ride the bus together, and I'd make sure the seat next to me wasn't taken till we got to her house.
Okay. Thank you for honoring Daddy in this way. We're very proud of him, obviously, and we have long and strong roots in Stillwater, and so we were happy to have a lot of our family, not all of it. When somebody has 5 kids, and then they have kids, and then they are starting to have kids, we'll be here a while. But can everybody at least stand up or come up here? And I'll try to be quick so we don't have to have lunch here, too. Okay. So we'll start with the oldest is my brother Randy, and then the rest, luckily, we're 4 girls. So we've got Mindy, she's the baby. I'm the second from the youngest, Melissa. Karen, we're missing today. She's home planting wheat with her husband. And then we've got Carla, her husband Mark, my Aunt Sherry, who has entertained us growing up with stories galore. Carla's daughter Anna, who graduated from Stillwater High School. Paige, who is not from Stillwater, but might as well be. And she went to OSU. And then her husband Bailey, they just are newlyweds. Mindy, I've mentioned, her husband Jeff behind there. So, and then, where's Dylan? Oh, Dylan's in the back with our newest family member, little Maverick. So, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And there's a few Heiner brothers sitting around too, I see. Good to have them all here. Our last inductee is Kirby Brock, and here to present him is Steve Shaw.
We'll lower these just a little. Uh-oh. That figured. At any rate, it's good to stand up. Diane came to me and asked me if I wouldn't do this, and I told her that I would be thrilled and honored to do this. And we get started. You know, I first met Kirby Brock in about the 7th grade, and here comes Kirby, and I'd never met him at all, and it's brand new starch shirt, pressed pants, black dress shoes, freshly shined, white socks, pullback hair, and Kirby was all of about 80 pounds in the 7th grade, and about 5 of it was Brill cream. And I go, well, all right then, you know, and so we got started in the relationship, and after I got to know Kirby and we got on through the junior high years and got into high school, I realized Kirby was a very private person, and when you do research on Kirby, you better be a detective. But at any rate, I made probably 20, 25 calls, and they all had about the same thing in common, that Kirby Brock was an outstanding, modest, determined, helpful, courteous, nice guy. But one of the younger classmen said, Bill Heiner, but you didn't want to cross him, there would be consequences. And the Brock spread was not far from the Heiner spread. But Kirby did mentor a lot of those kids, helped them with their pole vaulting when they were younger, and tried to bring them along. He was a real determined guy. Walt Voss pointed that to me, and you know, Kirby was, you didn't know what he was up to, and he shows up one day and he's Godzilla, pretty much. Very strong, well put together athlete, extremely athlete, and he was a hard worker and knew where he wanted to go and what he wanted to do. Bill said, you know, the S Club initiation was a lot less severe because Kirby was there to protect some of us, and I have no idea who he was protecting them from, but I've got, well, maybe some inkling. But anyway, Kirby was hardworking, enterprising guy, and he started pole vaulting with a plastic conduit pole, electric pipe, made in a homemade pit with a homemade crossbar, and that was the kind of determination and work ethic that was common theme throughout Kirby's life. He was a tough guy, but he did have a kryptonite. Kirby was afraid of snakes. You'd think a farm boy wouldn't be, but at any rate, Kirby was. But his family moved to Stillwater when Kirby was in the 4th grade from Perkins. In high school, by the time he was a senior, he was a state champion pole vaulter. Then received a full ride scholarship to Oklahoma State University for his pole vaulting talents. He was a modest guy. I never heard him say not one time, state champion or I had a good whatever. He didn't even go there. He was a good student and was a very artistic guy. Also, he did about the first 3 pamphlets we handed out for our class reunions, gave of his time and talent, and they were beautiful works. He also sang in the concert chorus, which they didn't let just anybody come and sing. Kirby had a nice voice. His senior year, Tom Chesbrough went to him and finally talked him into coming out for wrestling his senior year, and he wasn't a big fan of pulling weight, but he was already the leanest guy in school. So we had some fun. We would weigh Kirby in at 177, get him to take his shirt off and watch the other team kind of back up a step or two. He was kind of an Adonis kind of guy, and it was a lot of fun. Tom Derringer shared this story with me, and Kirby and Diane got married in '71. Diane's first teaching job was at a small country school called Deep Rock near Cushing, and they lived in a country home with a cat named Socks, who liked to hunt and would bring home prey of all sizes for their approval. And the cat would drop its victim into this deep cast iron tub for playtime. And I'm here to set the record straight in regard to Kirby's vaulting. His greatest, highest, and fastest vault wasn't made at the high school state championship, and it wasn't made at OSU. It was made when the cat dropped the snake into the deep bathtub with Kirby in it. And Diane and Tom still laugh about that particular incident. But Kirby went on to have a successful career as a commercial and home construction, remodeling. As I said, he had an artistic side. He was a good student, and I believe Kirby would be thrilled and honored to receive this induction into the Stillwater Pioneer Athlete Memorial. And at this time, Diane, would you please come up and receive this award?
oldest brother, Tom, and my younger brother, little brother, is Rick over there, and his daughter, Autumn, and Kirby's brother, John, and his wife, Mary Ann, and cousin Bob Brock, and Marcia Harmon, cousin. And I think that's it. Did I miss anyone? Oh, and my dad. Yeah. John Derringer, our brother.
Thanks, Steve. Good job. I take great pride in claiming that we gave that cat to the Brocks that brought that snake in. So, at this time, I'm going to have Max Talley, one of the board members, come forward and have some closing remarks for us.
A couple of things that have come to mind is I have a hard time when somebody calls Rick Derringer their little brother, because have you seen how tall Rick is? I mean, come on. And then it made me think about it. Tom brought the S out for the S Club, and Kirby Brock's story, you know, Kirby was pretty strong. We lettered at the same time, so we go through the initiation. And let me think how I can say this. The members dug a pit out at the lake and filled it with, I'm sure, just water. And so we'd have a tug of war. Well, they matched me up with Kirby, and I guess because we were the same height. So Coach Harris had barely said, ready, set, go, and I was in the water. I mean, he popped me in like that. So anyway, that's the part of our program. We hope that it brought back some memories, told you some things that we do. We want to honor pioneer athletes for their skills when they were in school, their athletic abilities, and what they did in life. Part of Coach Harris's charge to us, and what we ask you now is we build a fund. We're fundraisers, and we take care of that. And as Tom said, we have a scholarship where we provide $10,000 scholarship to a graduating pioneer athlete. It's really hard to choose just one. We go through an interview selection committee, and there's just so many, it's really hard. What we would like to do in time, our goal is to have at least 2 scholarships. So with your help, Pioneer families and friends, if you will continue to donate tax-deductible donations to the Stillwater Pioneer Athlete Memorial, it goes to a good fund, and we are good stewards of your funds. There's a little envelope on the table and back that you can put a donation in if you wish to. We really appreciate it. We would like to invite all the families to remain up here to take pictures first before you leave. Ken Helt, former pioneer, is going to take our pictures. And before you leave, please go back there and eat those cookies, or Tom and I will eat them all. All right? Thank you for coming. We appreciate it. Have a good day. Families. And I think all the